Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's wonderful to be here with you. My name is Kaylee Isaacs. I'm the producer of the Mindful Relationship Summit and the founder of the Awake Network. It's my honor to introduce New York Times bestselling author Susan Piver tonight. She's the founder of the Open Heart Project, an international mindfulness community with close to 20,000 members. And as you'll see tonight, she is incredibly refreshing and down to earth in her teaching style, and a very skilled meditation teacher. And Susan's been an incredible friend and ally to me personally and to the Awake Network, all the way from the beginning when we first produced our online event, originally through Chabal Mountain Center in 2014. So we're going to start off tonight hearing from Susan on the 4 noble truths of love and 3 steps for applying those truths in your relationships. And then we'll be asking some questions from the community. So if you do have a question, what you'll do is you'll scroll down on this page and you'll see a comments area, and you want to type your comment in there. So go ahead and give it a try. Introduce yourself. Let us know where you're tuning in from. And that's also where you can ask questions throughout the broadcast. We'll be taking those in the second half of the call. So after the Q&A, we'll also have the opportunity to hear a little bit about Susan's work and her Open Heart Sangha project. So I'm looking forward to that. And it's now my honor to welcome Susan Piver.
Thank you, Kaylee. Thank you so much for that kind introduction. It's always great to work with you because you are a rock star. So please don't ever forget that. Thank you. Excuse me. It's a privilege to be able to talk to you about the 4 noble truths of love for so many reasons. I've personally found them to be incredibly helpful in my own relationship. And also it is a privilege to be able to work with some foundational Buddhist teachings to bring them into the world of relationships. This is a whole new area of exploration for our culture, I would even say. Most of the Buddhist teachings that are, many of which are, or all of which that I've ever encountered are incredibly profound, actually really work when translated into modern contexts, which kind of surprised me when I first began to investigate it because A, these teachings are up to 2,500 years old, and B, most of the teachings were written by extraordinary teachers who lived in monasteries or forests, as opposed to in apartments with partners and having bills and jobs and email. So it's been really astonishing in a wonderful way for me to find how readily these ancient teachings translate into our modern life. They merge quite seamlessly into our context. And this topic, the 4 noble truths of love, is an example of that. So I want to start by just telling you a little bit about what the 4 noble truths of Buddhism are. I'll keep it brief. And then explain how they relate to our relationships and love life. I thought to transpose the 4 noble truths of Buddhism onto my love life during a time when my relationship with my partner was going very, very poorly. I think that's the nicest way I could say it. Everything that happened between us turned into an argument. I would say that we were in a fight, but the fight had no theme, no center, no fringe, no topic. It just seemed to be a cloud that enveloped us. Where should we spend our vacation? Ended up getting us into a giant fight. What time are you going to wake up in the morning? Would cause a tremendous argument. I remember once during this time we were traveling together and we were driving through the countryside and I said, "Where do you want to eat dinner?" And this provoked like an epic argument. I cannot even remember why, but we were at each other's throats to the point where I said, "Just pull over the car, I'm getting out." And he did, and it was nighttime, and this was in rural France. I had no idea where I was, but I just got out of the car and just like walked into this field. I just wanted to be anywhere but where he was until I got scared, and then I went back to the car. But at one point during this period, and it wasn't days and it wasn't weeks, it was months, I became despairing. And I started to think maybe this relationship was over. Maybe it just couldn't work out. At this point, we'd been together for like 15 years. And I was just crying. And I was saying to myself, I don't know what to do. I don't even know where to start. And then I heard a voice inside my own head, so I presume it was me talking to myself, that said, begin at the beginning. At the beginning are four noble truths. And as a longtime Buddhist practitioner, this meant something to me. So, because the four noble truths of the Buddha are the very foundation of the Buddhist path. Whether you practice in a Zen tradition, a Tibetan tradition, a Theravadan tradition, these truths inform every step of the Buddhist path. So let me just refer to them briefly. These are the four things that the Buddha shared with his posse, I guess you call them, when he attained enlightenment. He went back to his friends and said, I've attained enlightenment. And they said, what did you see? He said, I saw four things that are true. The first truth is called the truth of suffering. Life is suffering, is the first noble truth. But even though that sounds like a big bummer, I do not think the Buddha meant life sucks or life is terrible. I think what he meant was the nature of life is that everything changes and there is actually nothing to hold on to while we craft our minute-to-minute, year-to-year experience as humans in the effort of creating something solid. And that is actually not possible. So that the impermanence is real, and that there is nothing to hold on to, of course, is a form of suffering. The second noble truth is called the cause of suffering. The cause of suffering here is called grasping. A simpler way of saying that, or a simple way of saying that, is not wanting the first noble truth to be true is actually what causes the suffering, as opposed to the impermanence itself. In other words, if we just rolled with impermanence, we would not suffer. But it's fighting impermanence, grasping onto something that we hope will be permanent, is what actually causes the suffering. So because we can identify this as the cause of suffering, the third noble truth is the cessation of suffering, which says, oh, you could stop doing that. And the fourth noble truth is in the Buddhist, in the Buddha Dharma, is the path for doing so, the path for this cessation of suffering. It's called the Eightfold Path. And it includes 8 steps: right view, right intention, right speech, right livelihood, right action, right effort, right mindfulness, right wisdom, I think is the 8th one, or right samadhi. So if you do those 8 things, have the right view and the right intention and so on, each right thing arises from the one before it, that is how you stop suffering. So when this voice said to me, begin at the beginning are 4 noble truths, I thought, well, what would the 4 noble truths be in my situation relating to my relationship? So I started thinking about them and arrived at the 4 noble truths of love, which I'm going to share with you in a moment. But I want to issue a caveat right up front, or an admonition, maybe is a better word, which is, I made these up. So I just want to be very clear that the 4 noble truths of love were not teachings from the Buddha or any great Buddhist teachers of the last 2,500 years. They are things that I imagined, and I have found them to be helpful. And that's why I want to share them with you. But the only way that you will find them helpful, excuse me, is if you think about them yourself and make up your own versions of them. You can keep the same exact truths, but you have to make up your own meaning for them. Maybe it's a better way to say it. Because just as with any spiritual teaching, the most important thing for you to bring is your own intelligence, because your own intelligence is the real teacher. So I invite you to think about these things, contemplate them, and then check them out in your own life. Compare them to your experience. If your experience corroborates them, now it is your wisdom. You can tell people you made them up. What you cannot corroborate, because you see, oh, that actually isn't true, even though Susan said it is, I don't think it is. Awesome. You don't have to ever think about that again. So in other words, keep what is meaningful to you and discard the rest. So as I'm talking, if questions arise, don't hesitate to type them in chat, because when we get to the point of questions, I think there's even like a little delay here. So we might be sitting here, oh, I wonder if anyone's asking questions. So if the questions are there, A, we'll know that you have them, and B, we'll be able to just jump right to them. So as soon as a question arises, don't hesitate to type it into chat. The first noble truth of love is that relationships are uncomfortable. I'll say that again. Relationships are uncomfortable. I say this for personal experience and also from observation. And you yourself, I imagine, know this to be true, that at any point along the relationship spectrum, discomfort accompanies you. So at the very beginning, you're going to go out on a date with someone, maybe it's even a blind date and you've never even met them. You're already uncomfortable because it's scary to meet someone new. And you think, well, what if they don't like me? Or what if they do like me? Or what if they're creepy? Or what if I want to get away and I can't? Or what if I like them and they don't like me? There's just this sense of like sort of agita that is very natural. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, but it's a kind of discomfort. You don't even know the person. And then, fast forward 20 years to the discomfort of you share a household with someone who keeps doing that thing that irritates you, that you asked them and they promised to never ever do again. Oh, guess what? They just did it. The irritation of just living with someone is uncomfortable. I don't know how I meet people sometimes that say, oh, it's just so easy for us to be together. And I look at them like, you must be from a different planet, because there are lots of things I love, many things about being with my partner, but I wouldn't say it is easy for us to just navigate the ups and downs of everyday life. And to add to that, no one really tells you that living with someone comes with a lot of irritation. I don't mean to make him sound or myself sound like, not great to live with, because he is great and he is great to live with. But there is just the irritation of being close to another person, which you've probably experienced in your family of origin or in your relationship if you're in one, that doesn't stop. And then, of course, there is the discomfort even of falling madly in love, which is like one of the most heightened and transcendent states that we human beings can inhabit. And it's real and it's amazing and it's blissful. But there's the discomfort of feeling that it could end, because it will. There's the discomfort of perhaps not knowing how to contain all of this feeling, or the discomfort of not being able to think of anything else but this person that you've fallen in love with. And it's wonderful for sure, but there's also this some kind of unease, if only because it's not a state of mind that we experience every day of our lives. And of course, there is the discomfort of losing love. Discomfort is far too weak of a word, but when we lose a love relationship for whatever reason, there's a reason, I think, that you can't sleep, you can't eat, you can't figure out what to do with yourself from minute to minute, because you are so uncomfortable. And everything you do provokes more discomfort. It's the ultimate in discomfort, is to lose love. And again, I know that word is way too weak to describe the gut-wrenching sorrow of that form of loss. But the first noble truth that I posit to you is that relationships are uncomfortable. The second noble truth is that thinking they should be comfortable is what makes them uncomfortable. So, of course, we all think, well, someday, or maybe this day, I'll find love. And and along with that, I will also find ease, and I will find satisfaction, and I will find protection, and I will find an embrace. And yes, you will. All of those things are true and possible, but they are not permanent. Often, I believe that when people say they want love in their life, they don't really mean that, because love is very fiery and rocky and unpredictable. Often what people mean, and what I probably meant too, is I want to be safe. I want to feel protected from certain vagaries of life. I want to be relieved of loneliness and sadness and all things that I hope you will be relieved of. But love doesn't really do that, particularly. In some cases, it actually highlights those things. But we think that because things are uncomfortable with a partner, that it's a sign that something has gone wrong, or that this is not a good relationship, or not the right relationship. But before I go any further with that, I want to exempt from this relationships that involve abuse or addiction, because that is a whole other class of relationship. And if you think, well, I'm uncomfortable, or Susan says relationships aren't supposed to make me comfortable, and I'm not comfortable because my partner's abusive, or one of us has an addiction problem. Well, this rule does not apply to that. None of this applies to that. That is an entirely different category. So I just don't want anyone to think that they should put up with any form of abuse, emotional, spiritual, physical, obviously, or addictive behaviors, that you should make room for those things. Ixnay. So thinking they should make us comfortable is what makes them uncomfortable. So imagine if you looked at your partner not as a source of happiness for yourself alone, but as a separate human being. And what if the purpose of relationships wasn't for that person to make you happy, and you to make that person happy, but instead to explore what creates happiness together, what creates unhappiness, and to sort of appreciate from the bottom of your heart those moments when happiness is present, and when you do feel safe and protected and embraced, and those moments are absolutely to be treasured. But because you can't get along in other moments, it doesn't mean that there's a problem. It does not mean that something has gone wrong. It means that there's something else to consider together, which leads to the third noble truth, which is that meeting the discomfort together is love, I would posit. If you're looking for a partner who will make you happy, maybe you'll find that. If you're looking to make someone happy, maybe you'll be able to find a situation where you can do that. But to me, the most potent and lasting relationships don't come from one person making the other one happy while that one is making the first one happy. Because there will be periods of happiness and periods of unhappiness. And the best we can ask for, and it is far better than anything I might have imagined, again, is not someone who will make me happy, but who will stand shoulder to shoulder with me and look together at the energy and ebb and flow of happiness and unhappiness as they both stream through our relationship, and look at it together. Oh, now we're happy. Now we're unhappy. Now you're happy, but I'm not. This thing happened that caused this kind of a deepening in our relationship, or this happened that caused us to feel disconnected from each other. To look at the periods of connection and disconnection, clear-eyed, brave, kind, and fierce is love, I would say. So the third noble truth, meeting the discomfort together, is love. It's a very powerful thing to do, and if you can find someone who will do that with you, you're in extremely good shape. That's a good partner, I would say. Is there something else I want to say about that? No, I don't think so. And if any of this, however, is causing questions to arise in your mind, or comments, if you want to share a reflection on this, something it makes you think of, and or you have a question, this would be a great time to drop those in chat so that as our conversation progresses, we know what questions you have. I can jump right to the questions when I'm finished with my talk, which will be in about 10 minutes or so. I want, with all my heart, to be able to address your questions as quickly and as thoroughly as I can. So if you have any, pop them in chat. The fourth noble truth is that there is a way to work with it all. In the Buddhist Four Noble Truths, the fourth noble truth was the Eightfold Path. But I want to posit to you a threefold path here. And these 3 steps are based on, in what is called in Buddhism, the 3 yanas. Yana means vehicle. And they're refer to the 3 main cycles of teachings given by the Buddha. And each cycle contains the other 2. These cycles are not like beginning, middle, and end. They are circular and inseparable. But when the Buddha became enlightened and gave the Four Noble Truths, this gave rise to a cycle of teachings called the Hinayana. The Hinayana teachings are what you and I and anyone needs to do when we embark on the spiritual path. And it involves things like what you would imagine if you're about to embark on any kind of spiritual path or any kind of path to learn anything. First, you need a sense of simplicity and clarity. Oh, this is what I'm doing. A kind of discipline, like I'm actually going to do it. And what is called renunciation. And that doesn't mean renouncing all the things you like and only doing the things you don't like. Here it means something like renouncing BS, renouncing what is non-essential to your exploration. So these are the foundational teachings of the Buddhist path and of the relationship path, as you'll see in a moment. When you do have this basic foundation created in your spiritual life, something happens very naturally for us as human beings, because this is just how we're built. When we're not in fight or flight, when we're not in survival mode, when we basically have a sense of simplicity and discipline and we've cut out BS from our life, something happens in our heart. Our heart softens to other people in a different way than it does when we look at them when we're in a more fight or flight or unsteady mode. At unsteady points in your life, unsteady points in our lives, we look at other people not as discrete human beings with hopes and fears of their own. Rather, we look at them as devices, someone who could make us happy, or solve some piece of our problem, or contribute to our unhappiness, and therefore we want to avoid them. So we have a very sort of narrow, claustrophobic view of other people. But when we have a basic sense of stability in our life, we can look at other people in a much more spacious way. So our heart softens and opens. And this second cycle of teachings, the Mahayana teachings, are about that heart opening and speak to the truth of love in both its relative and absolute forms, and gives incredible insight into how to love, how to be compassionate, how to celebrate the joys of others and care for them in their pain. The third cycle of teachings, called the Vajrayana, are the teachings that relate to what is possible when you have a sense of stability and you know how to love. When those two things are present in your life, you can develop a kind of courage and fierceness that enables you to see the wakeful aspect of every moment, in every moment of your life, I'd say. So these teachings relate to waking up in any given moment. They relate to something sometimes called ordinary magic, which is a heightened sense of your surroundings, of colors, of sounds, of smells, of tastes, and so on. You're just more awake. So we have these three phases: stable and disciplined, open and loving, awake and aware. And this is how they relate to our relationship life. The first phase and first step that you can take to apply these things into your life is to bring some hinayana discipline into your relationship world by simply being honest, by simplifying your relationship life or your expectations, let's say, of your relationship or of love, by relaxing. Often, especially when we're longing for love, we can get very anxious, like, what if I never find someone? What if I find the wrong person? Or I need to make 6 or 8 lists of qualities that I'm looking for, and then put myself out there and look for people that have those qualities, and invoke all these strategies to solve this problem. That can get very overwhelming. So the more we can relax, not so easy, but you can do it. Simplify. Of course, some discipline is very helpful. When you're in a relationship, the discipline of simply paying attention to that person and paying attention to your own inner experience of that person. And it means things like, be honest. Do the things you say you're going to do. If you say you're going to show up at 9 o'clock, show up at 9 o'clock. Or if you can't, then call and say you can't. Just this very basic stand-up human decency is really, really important in a relationship and in bringing the Four Noble Truths to life. It even includes things like good manners. One, I cannot overstate the incredible importance of simple good manners in keeping a relationship steady and strong. I don't mean the good manners of knowing what fork to use. I mean the good manners of consideration and thoughtfulness about that person. There's no way I can overstate power and importance of good manners in a relationship. The second thing that you can do, the Mahayana sort of view of relationships, the second of the 3 steps, and this is very radical, or it felt very radical to me when I thought about it. It is to consider the other person in the relationship to have at least equal importance to yourself in the relationship. I remember, thinking at one point early on in my own relationship that, oh, wait, this isn't just about me. There's actually this other person here. And he, as a Buddhist, I've taken vows of compassion and roused the intention over and over again to think of others as more important than myself, or at least as equal importance to myself when I can't imagine, the former. And that's hard to do in the best of circumstances, but when it comes to my personal relationship, it's the hardest to do. The more we love, the closer we are, the more difficult it is to give that other person equal time, as it were, in the relationship. The more we interpret their every action and word as having meaning for us, like, oh, if you do that, it will make me happy. If you do that, it will make me unhappy. We stop seeing them as separate individuals and see them only as people who can give us or deprive us of things we need. And so I would not call that loving. That's striking a bargain with someone. The third step, and the last thing I want to mention before we go to any conversation, if you want to have, again, please enter any questions or comments in chat. I'd love to hear what you think. I'd love to hear if you agree, and I would really love to hear if you disagree. And of course, questions are always good. You can put them in the chat window. The third step that we can take, in addition to having good manners and being honest, and if you're in a relationship with someone that can't have good manners or be honest, there's really not much hope for that relationship. Just like there's not much hope for your spiritual practice if you can't kind of be basically disciplined and have some kind of sense of simplicity. And I'm not the most disciplined person in the world, so I don't mean to scare anyone by saying that, but a general sense. And if you're in a relationship with someone that cannot view you as having equal importance to themselves in the relationship, that's not going to be, that might not turn out so good. And this final step is to view everything that happens between you and this person not as a possibility to fall more deeply in love, but as the possibility to deepen intimacy. Because falling in love, that period always ends. And nobody really tells you that there's a difference between love affairs, falling in love, that period, and relationships. We think our love affairs should turn into relationships, and that our relationships should continue to be love affairs. And the truth is, that's rare. But we should at least be aware of the distinction. At some point, if you want to be in a relationship with someone, the love affair needs to land in some kind of way. And, falling in love is as close to a transcendent state, train whistle on the truth, that I think we human beings can ever experience. It is like going to another planet. It's like visiting a God realm. But we don't live in a God realm. We live in the human realm. And so though I have enjoyed my visits to that planet very, very much, I always find myself back here. And I believe that you will too. And the more we try to get back to that planet, the more frustrating it is, because one cannot will themselves onto the planet of love. One seems to only arrive by auspicious coincidence. That seems to be the soul conveyance. So when we find ourselves back here, now what do we do? Because falling in love is a phase in a relationship, although it can return over and over again. I've been married now for 19 years, and I can tell you it does return over and over again. But in between those periods, we can still have this rapturous kind of connection, not by trying to get back to the falling in love planet, but by viewing everything that happens between us as an opportunity, as I say, to deepen intimacy. When we understand each other, when we connect, our intimacy deepens. When we misunderstand each other and we disconnect and we argue and we cannot understand each other, that too is an opportunity to deepen our intimacy. Because intimacy doesn't mean love. Intimacy means knowing each other, being willing to reveal yourself in all of your beauty and all of your mess to another person, and being open and willing to embrace another person in their beauty and their mess, seeing them truly. That has no end. Romance always ends, but intimacy has no end. And you can commit to that for the rest of your life. So if you ever have been or will be in a wedding ceremony, for example, and you're wondering, well, what can you really commit to? You can commit to intimacy. That has no end. That can last a lifetime and continue to always deepen. So just for a brief recap, the Four Noble Truths of Love: relationships are uncomfortable. Thinking they are supposed to be comfortable is what makes them uncomfortable. Meeting the discomfort together is love. There are three things that you can do to bring these Four Noble Truths, these previous three truths into your life. You can have some simplicity, some good manners, thoughtfulness, honesty. You can open your heart to the other person as being equally as important as yourself. And you can utilize everything that comes your way together as a way of deepening intimacy. So I hope you found that useful. And if you have any questions, I would love to hear them.
Thank you so much,
Susan.
Susan.
You're welcome.
We have some good questions coming in. We have a question from Carol that's very similar to another question that came in from Roz. So Carol wants to know your definition of love in the context of this presentation, and Roz wants to know if this path can also relate to friends and family as well as romantic relationships.
Those are good questions. Thank you, Carol and Roz. I don't really know how to define love, so I don't know how to define it particularly. But this is what I've been talking about is more like romantic relationships. But I really believe that these things apply to any relationship. Simplicity and honesty and thoughtfulness and considering the other person to have importance and using what arises as a way to deepen intimacy. Absolutely, I think that these truths can apply in our families and in our friendships and in our work relationships. I've just given them a particular context of romantic relationships because that's how they first arose in my mind, and also it's the subject of a book that I'm in the middle of writing right now. So that's why it's particularly framed in this way. But sure, you can apply these things anywhere.
Thank you.
Sure.
So the next question is from Jennifer. She asks, can you say more about how to open and relax our hearts when we are going through difficult times in our relationship or at the end of a relationship?
Yeah. What's that person's name?
Jennifer.
Jennifer. Thank you, Jennifer. Of course, that is the most difficult time to relax, when things are going poorly or when things are ending. But here, relax does not mean feel okay with or be undisturbed by or be chill. Here, relax means feel. Relax with what is. Allow what you feel to be present is actually more relaxing than wishing you didn't feel that way or trying to minimize that feeling or cut it short or explain to yourself why you shouldn't feel that way or torturing yourself by thinking I'm going to always feel this way. Here, relax means allow. And that takes a lot of courage, especially in the kinds of situations that you're talking about. So I'm not suggesting it's easy or that you should be able to do it, no problem. But when you find yourself extremely not relaxed, suffering in pain, sad, as you can, allow yourself to feel what you are feeling for 30 seconds, 5 minutes, a split second, as long as you can tolerate. And what this means is not the story of why you feel that way, but the actual feeling itself, which usually happens in your body. Although some people feel their feelings in the environment, I would say. So feeling means, let's say you're angry. You would feel something in your chest or your shoulders or your head, or you might just feel a general sense of heat rising, or you might feel that the environment has become threatening. So feeling what you feel means placing your attention on those things, but not the story, like I feel this way because, or I'll never not feel this way. Those are thoughts about the story, and they may be very, very useful and important, but they get in the way of feeling. They get in the way of relaxing, which again means feeling or allowing. So as you can, and if you're a meditation practitioner, you have some experience with doing this because you've practiced placement of attention on breath and letting thought go. You can practice placement of attention on sensation, on feeling. And when thoughts arise, let them go. You don't have to be a meditator to be able to do that, although it is very helpful. So I hope that is clarifying. I don't want you to think relax means, oh yeah, this is fine, it's no big deal. It means to allow yourself to be exactly as you are. That is what relaxing is. And to feel your feeling, as Pema Chodron, the great Buddhist teacher, said, feel the feelings and drop the story for a little while and see what that does. I hope that's useful.
Our next question is from Ryan. He asks, how do you differentiate passion, which is thought of as positive in relationships today, versus passion in traditional Buddhism, which is usually thought of as a negative state to be in?
That's a great question. Thank you, Ryan. Yeah, through the Buddhist view, passion has lots of different, there are many ways to look at what passion is. It sort of depends on your view. So there are many schools of Buddhism that say passion is a problem. It's actually the second noble truth. Grasping creates suffering. Like, passion is a kind of grasping. And so passion and other strong emotions are obstacles to the path. On some level, that is true. But there are other Buddhist views, other ways of looking at passion and negative emotion, not as problems, but as potential sources of wisdom. In this particular Buddhist view, negative emotions, conflictive emotions, are seen as having their opposite contained within them. I said that in a very awkward way. What I'm trying to say is that every negative emotion contains the seed of wisdom. So if you look at anger, anger is considered an enormous obstacle, and 99.9% of the time it is, because we don't bring mindfulness to our anger. We're not aware of our anger in a particular way. We let it run away with us. But if you look under the surface of anger and let go of what you are angry about, you find this quality called clarity. What is it called in the Buddha families? Can't remember. Clear seeing, the wisdom of clear seeing. So you find this sort of anger, yeah, it's horrible and ugly and can cause all the problems in the world, basically. But there's also a sharpness and a precision and a coolness and a piercing nature to anger that, if we can ride it instead of it riding us, can be extremely powerful and beneficial. So when it comes to passion, there's also a negative and a positive manifestation. So the negative manifestation is this grasping, where the entire world shrinks into, this is the thing I want, and this is the thing this is either the thing I want or just the thing I don't want. So the entire world just shrinks into this, one pointed little, I don't want that, oh, I do want that. And everything that you see and everyone that you talk to and everything that you experience either is the thing you want or the thing you don't want, or not the thing you want. So the entire world just shrinks to this minuscule, claustrophobic, very unpleasant, not good for you, not good for others way of moving through the world. But imagine what it would be like if you could feel that sense of longing, of passion, but without a particular object. Just the general sense of longing, of passion, of awakened heart, you could even call it. But you didn't have an object. But that sense of looking so closely and measuring everything so carefully wasn't just about this one thing, but you could actually overlay that view on everything. You would have the ability to pierce through to the essence of whatever and whomever you encounter, because you're paying such close attention, just as closely as you would if you were only looking for one thing, but instead that fierceness of attention can spread to everything. In that sense, in this way, passion becomes what is called discriminating awareness. The ability to tell, to detect the fine differences between colors, people, words, sensations, emotions, everything that you experience, you have this fine sense of what it is. So it's this kind of very elevated, uplifted, into insight, intuition, into exactly what is really happening. So in this way, passion creates color and fire and energy. You see with fire and energy and warmth everything that happens. So that's a very wonderful thing. So just to briefly recap, yeah, it's a problem if you look at it in this one particular way. But if you look beneath the afflictive emotion for the wisdom aspect, you will find it. And that requires mindfulness. I hope that is useful.
was very useful for me.
It's useful for me too. I'm glad.
So we're coming close to the end of time. So if anyone has any last questions, just scroll down and enter them in the comments. We're going to take one or two more. And so this next one is from Peter. Maybe you have some thoughts for him. So he says, I have a relationship with a partner in another country, and we spend times apart in our own countries. At those times, I feel there's a part of me in another place, which is rather uncomfortable. And I'd like to be fully in the present place and time.
Oh, yeah, Peter, I get it. Yeah, your heart, a part of your heart is somewhere else. But that doesn't mean you're not present. It at all. What's happening in the present is you're noticing that a piece of your heart is somewhere else. So that doesn't mean you are somewhere else, but you're noticing that you're thinking of this other person and you're longing for them and you're wondering what they're doing and thinking about when you're next going to see them or talk with them. That's fine. You're present. You're present to that. So present doesn't mean ignoring the past and the future and all of your thoughts. It means being with your thoughts about the past and the future and right now, being with that. So don't worry, you are present as you notice what you are experiencing. That's all you have to do. So you've already done it, you already got it.
And this might be the last one. We'll see. We have a request for you to elaborate on what you mean by good manners.
Oh, good manners. This is a favorite topic of mine. And it's not because I have like the world's best manners, but every once in a while I think I would really like someday to write a book, the Buddhist book of manners, because so much of spiritual practice, so much of the teachings on compassion and loving kindness have some aspect of good manners to them. I don't mean in the mismanners, drink your tea like this kind of way. I mean that in order to have good manners, you have to have a panoramic awareness. You have to sort of be aware, not just of what you are experiencing, but what the other person is experiencing and what is occurring in the environment. Good manners means awareness of it all. The word we would use is thoughtfulness. You're thinking of the other person and you're thinking of what you're doing together and you're thinking of the space that you inhabit together. So, this is not the world's greatest example, but if I'm a house guest in someone's home, I try to have good manners, as most people do. And the way I try to have good manners is I try to notice where they have things so that I can put them back in that place. I try to notice how they like to arrange things, what they think makes a dish clean. Just these very simple household things that if you're staying in someone's house, you want to pay attention to those things. It's not just about bringing them a gift and saying thank you, but it's about honoring their household. So to do that, you have to pay attention to the way they do things and where they put things. It's very simple, but that's what I mean by good manners, the kind of thoughtfulness and awareness of the environment and thinking about how the person that you happen to share that environment with is experiencing things. It means thinking of them and the space you're in together. So I hope that clarifies.
Well, thank you so much, Susan, for sharing your time with us tonight. I really appreciated it. And I can see from a lot of the comments that I'm not alone. There's a lot of appreciation in the comments.
Oh, good.
And, since we can't give an applause, not that we normally would for a Dharma talk, let Susan know how you felt about tonight. Write something in the comments if you appreciated it. So, I did mention at the beginning that we'd have an opportunity to hear a little bit about your work, especially your online Sangha and your Four Noble Truths of Love course, which I think is a wonderful step for people to take that are interested in exploring this further. So could you tell us a little bit more about both of those and why you decided to offer them?
Sure. Well, I have an online community, as you mentioned in the beginning, called the Open Heart Project Sangha. And the Open Heart Project was created to support people who want not just a meditation practice, but to bring mindfulness into every aspect of their life. It's kind of like an online meditation center. It is an online meditation center. There are daily meditations. We have a guest teacher every single day leading a live practice session. We have a monthly theme. There's a wonderful community of people that support each other. It's an online community. It's an online mindfulness community that seems to really be feeling in need, because there are people that can't get to such a place because they don't live near one, or they just have a lot of responsibilities and don't have time. So it's a way for you to practice in community with me and with others. And I invite you to check it out. It's been a real honor to create it. And there is a Four Noble Truths of Love e-course that Kaylee will also tell you more about. But I created this to help us go more deeply into each of these truths. The questions that you all have asked are really, really good. And as you contemplate these truths, more questions will arise. And in addition to questions, which are really useful, what's really useful with the Four Noble Truths is to begin to apply them and see what happens. And this e-course, which has sort of 4 modules, investigates each truth one at a time. And I go into some more detail about what each truth means, but also offer suggestions for how you can apply it. There's simple homework to help you test these truths each week. There are contemplations that go along with each lesson. Each lesson will take about 90 minutes. So you could do the whole course in a month if you spend 1 week on each module. And again, you can just 90 minutes a week. But my hope is that it will not just be those 90 minutes that you spend thinking about this material, but that when you stop listening to these talks and reading this accompanying material, that you'll go out into your life with this sort of lens of looking at your world through the lens of the Four Noble Truths and see how it translates into your life. And my hope is that at the end of the program, you won't just have a better understanding of what Susan says the Four Noble Truths of Love are, but you'll have a better understanding of how to love, how to be loved, and how to be loving. So Kaylee can tell you a little bit more about that, but I created it with a lot of love. And, love is the most important thing in our lives. And my hope is that this can be just a tiny little foray into what it means to apply traditional ancient Buddhist wisdom to our modern relationships.
Yeah, and thank you for offering this course to our community. Susan and I concocted a special package for the Mindful Relationship Summit community, and so we're actually offering the full course, and I think we're up to 6 different bonus resources to help you along the way as well. And one of them I'm particularly excited about because it is a free month membership to the Open Heart Sangha that Susan mentioned. So that's a great way to try out that community. And we're offering the full course for only $39. So it's a really accessible way to get started and continue. And like Susan mentioned, you can do it in a month in just about 90 minutes a week, which feels really approachable to me. So that special offer is just for the Mindful Relationship Summit community, which you are a part of. And that is going to close on Sunday. So the course is something you can do at your own pace. It's open for the month, but all of the resources are downloadable. So you'll be able to start once you register, and then keep all the materials as long as you'd like by downloading them. And if you're interested in that, there is a button on this page just below the video. You can click on that and learn a little bit more. And make sure to do it before this Sunday, because that's when the registration will close. Yeah, so again, thanks so much, Susan, and thanks to all of you for joining us tonight. It's been wonderful having you here.
My pleasure. It has been a delight. Thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you so much for being here with us too.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Now I just have to find the end broadcast button.
I'm sure it's somewhere.